The door opened at exactly 10 a.m. My brother Wei walked in wearing the best suit he owned. He was carrying a leather portfolio under his arm and wearing the expression of a man who had been rehearsing this moment in the mirror for 2 weeks straight. He didn't see me at first. His eyes went straight to Su-Yun, the way everyone's eyes always go to Su-Yun. She has that quality, presence, the kind you can't manufacture. He crossed the room with his hand extended, and I watched him deliver the line he'd clearly prepared. Ms. Park, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm Wei Chen from Meridian Advisory Group. Su-Yun shook his hand and smiled, the warm, professional smile I'd watched her use in boardrooms from Seoul to San Francisco. Please call me Su-Yun. Let me introduce the team. She went around the table. Our Chief Security Officer, our VP of Compliance, and then she reached me. And this is Mei Chen, our Chief Operating Officer and co-founder. The room didn't make a sound. Wei's hand was already extended for the next handshake. It just stopped, frozen in midair. His face ran through 5 different expressions in about 3 seconds. Confusion, recognition, something close to vertigo, and then a kind of pale, silent horror that I'd never seen on my brother's face before. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Did you say Chen? I looked at him across the conference table. Hi, Wei. Let me take you back to the dinner where none of this existed yet, where I was still, as far as my family was concerned, the one who hadn't figured it out. My mother makes lamb stew when she wants the whole family together. I've known this my entire life. The smell of it hits you the moment you step off the elevator. She started making it for special occasions when we were kids. New Year, birthdays, Wei's promotions. Last night's dinner was for Wei's big pitch. I arrived at my parents' apartment at 7 and set my jacket on the hook by the door. My mother hugged me in the kitchen. She always holds on a few seconds longer with me than she does with Wei. I used to think it was affection. Now I understand it as a different kind of feeling entirely. Wei was already at the table, adjusting his collar. Big day tomorrow, my father said from his chair. Huge, Wei said. The CEO of Nexogen Systems personally requested this meeting. They don't do that for just anyone. My mother came in from the kitchen carrying the pot and set it in the center of the table. Tell them what you told me, she said to Wei, her eyes bright with pride. The CEO, Su-Yun Park, she built this company from nothing. 6 years, 0 to $180 million in revenue. Forbes listed her twice. She's a legend in the tech space, and tomorrow she's sitting across the table from me. He glanced at me when he said it. He always does that. It's the kind of glance that isn't really casual. What exactly do you do at the company again, Mei? My father asked. He asks every time. Consulting work, operations strategy. Wei laughed. It was short and light, the kind of laugh that wants to sound unbothered. She helps small businesses organize their storage rooms, something like that. I reached for the bread. Mei. My sister-in-law Vivian leaned forward with the expression she saves for me. Soft voice, hard eyes. At some point you have to ask yourself, what is the plan? You're 32. Wei was heading a department at 29. We just want to see you thriving. I'm doing fine. Fine. Wei said the word back to me like it was a diagnosis. My phone buzzed under the table. A message from Su-Yun. Your brother's team called again to confirm. They sound nervous. I typed back, first major pitch at this level. Understandable. Su-Yun replied with a single character, a period, which, for her, meant, we're really doing this. The CEO's office, Wei was saying, apparently has a view of the entire city from the top floor. I've never presented in a space like that. I looked out my parents' window at the city below. I designed that office, I thought, but I just said, sounds impressive. 6 years ago, I was working 3 jobs. I want to say that clearly because my family remembers it differently. They remember it as me being lost, scattered, unable to commit. What they don't know is that all 3 jobs were intentional. I was in healthcare administration during the day, doing compliance consulting on evenings, and working tech conference registration on weekends. Not because I needed the income, but because I needed the access. That's how I met Suyeon Park. She was giving a keynote at the MedTech Forward conference in the city. I was the person handing out lanyards at the registration desk. During the lunch break, she came back to the table looking for extra program booklets, and we started talking. I don't know how to explain what happens in certain conversations. You go in expecting nothing, and somewhere in the middle of it, the whole shape of your future shifts. That's what that conversation was. She had the technical architecture in her head, AI-driven healthcare integration, systems that could make hospitals, insurers, and clinics actually speak the same language. She'd been building the concept for 2 years. What she didn't have was someone who understood compliance law, healthcare administration, the operational reality of what she was trying to do. I did. The boring jobs my family quietly pitied me for had given me exactly that. We sat in the hotel coffee shop for 3 hours. She drew diagrams on napkins. I pointed out every regulatory wall she hadn't considered yet and how to build around them. By the time the conference evening session started, we both knew something had just happened. "We should build this," she said. "I know. I mean actually build it. Together." 3 weeks later, we filed incorporation papers for Nexagen Systems. We made a decision early on that shaped everything that followed. So-yeon would be the public face, the CEO, the keynote speaker, the name in the interviews. She was brilliant and magnetic, and the industry would respond to her. I would be the COO, operations, compliance, business development, contract structuring, team building. The engine, invisible by design. "You sure you don't want credit?" she asked the night we signed the partnership agreement. "Positive," I said. "Let them look at you. I'll build the thing they're looking at." She studied me for a moment. "Is this about your family?" I thought about that dinner 6 years ago, when I'd come home excited to tell everyone I was starting a company. Wei had laughed, not mockingly, almost worse than that. Like he couldn't even take it seriously enough to be dismissive. My father said, "Focus on stability." My mother said, "The risk. May, think of the risk." "It's not about them," I said. "It's about me. I want to build something that belongs entirely to me. No family money, no introductions, no one saying she only got there because of who she knows. Just what I can actually do." Suyeon nodded slowly. "Okay, but when we're at $200 million, I'm framing the article." I smiled. "Deal." Here's what people don't tell you about keeping a secret like this. It isn't hard to maintain. That's the part that surprised me. I expected it to feel like a performance, like I was working constantly to hide something, but it didn't feel like that. It felt like separating 2 lives that had simply chosen to run in parallel. At Nexagen, I was the COO who negotiated our first hospital network contract, who built our compliance framework from scratch, who hired our first 15 employees, who flew to Singapore for 3 weeks to close a $22 million deal while my mother's birthday dinner happened without me. I owned 40% of a company approaching $200 million in value. At family dinners, I was still the one who hadn't figured it out yet. I told myself for a long time that I was simply protecting my peace, that I had built something clean and mine, and I wasn't going to let it become a topic at Sunday dinners. Another thing for my family to have opinions about. But if I'm being honest, and I try to be, with myself at least, there was something else underneath that. I wanted to know how far it would go. Not to be cruel. More like a quiet, exhausted curiosity. My brother had spent 6 years commenting on my life from the position of someone succeeding while I failed. Every time I walked into my parents' apartment, the unspoken comparison was already in the room before I sat down. I wanted to know if there was a floor to it, if there was any version of me that they'd respect without a title attached to it. I was still waiting for that answer when Wei told us about his big pitch. And then I looked down at my phone, at Suyun's message, and I understood that the question was about to answer itself. I arrived at Nexigan headquarters at 9:30 through the east entrance. The building is in the financial district, 38 floors of glass and steel that Suyun and I had picked out together from a short list our real estate consultant put together 4 years ago. The top floor is ours. I had worked with the architect on the layout of that floor for 8 months. The conference rooms, the sight lines, the lighting, the view Wei had mentioned, the whole city laid out below the glass. I had made decisions about that view. Suyun was already in her office when I knocked. She looked up with the grin she uses when she's trying not to look like she's enjoying something too much. "Ready? Let's be professional," I said. "Evaluate his proposal honestly. If it's good, it's good, and if it's not, then it's not. He got this meeting on merit. His firm submitted a real proposal. We treat it like any other pitch." Suyun looked at me for a moment. "You know, a lot of people would have called their family a long time ago. Years ago. Why didn't you?" I thought about the napkins at the hotel coffee shop, the filing papers, the first contract, the Singapore trip, all of it built in the hours and years while my family watched me and saw nothing. "Because I needed something that was mine before it was theirs," I said. She nodded. She understood that. At 9:55, my assistant's voice came through the intercom. "The Meridian team is in the lobby." 5 minutes, I said, "then send them up." I walked to conference room B and took my seat, not at the head of the table, 3 chairs down on the right where I always sit. The morning light was coming through the floor-to-ceiling glass. The city was sharp and bright below. And at exactly 10, my brother walked in. I want to give Wei credit for what happened next, because after the introduction, after his hand froze and his face went through those 5 expressions and the room went completely quiet, he found something in himself and he held it together. He sat down. He opened his laptop. He began his pitch. His voice was steady. His slides were organized. He knew the material. He walked the room through Meridian's track record in technology integration, their experience with healthcare compliance systems, their proposed implementation timeline. It was a solid presentation. Not exceptional. We had seen sharper proposals from 2 other firms, but competent, honest. He had worked for this. The whole time, every time he glanced at me, I could see the recalibration happening behind his eyes. Every assumption he had built about our lives, mine and his, was being taken apart and rebuilt in real time. The comfortable, unexamined hierarchy of our family, the story of who succeeded and who hadn't, all of it quietly collapsing. When he finished, Suyun asked the technical questions. Our security officer went through protocols. Our compliance VP dug into their methodology. Then I spoke. "Wei," I said, "walk me through a full rebuild scenario. A client whose existing systems are too outdated to integrate. What does your approach look like?" He blinked once, thought. Then he answered clearly. "Full assessment phase. Identify critical systems. Phased migration plan. 0 downtime transition strategy. Timeline, 6 to 18 months depending on scope." "That aligns with our expectations," I said. Suyun stood. "We appreciate you coming in. We're evaluating several proposals and we'll have a decision within 2 weeks." Professional handshakes. His colleagues headed for the door. Wei stayed behind for a moment. "May." His voice was low. "Can we? I have a call in 10 minutes, I said. "Not cold, just clean. I'll reach out tonight." He nodded and followed his team out. When the door closed, our compliance VP let out a long breath. That was the most remarkable pitch meeting I've ever attended. Was his proposal good? Our security officer asked. I was honest. It was competent, but we've seen better from 2 other firms. We evaluate fairly. If Meridian is the best option when we finish the process, they get the contract. If they're not, they don't. I chose a wine bar 3 blocks from my building. Wei was already there when I arrived at 7. Sitting in the corner, a glass of whiskey in front of him, mostly untouched. He looked like a man who had spent the day trying to understand something and still hadn't gotten there. I sat down across from him. Nexagen Systems, he said. Not a question, just the words placed on the table between us. 6 years ago, Suyan and I co-founded it together. 180 million, closer to 195 million are as of last quarter. He stared at me. And you never said anything. You never asked. That's not. You don't just wait to be asked about something like that. We're family. You're supposed to tell us. I ordered a glass of wine. Then I looked at him. Do you remember the Sunday dinner when I said I was starting a tech company? He frowned. That was 6 years ago. You laughed, I said quietly. Not even a big laugh. Just a short one, like the idea was too small to take seriously. You said, with what qualifications? You don't even code. Dad said, find something stable. Mom said, think about the risk. Wei shifted in his seat. We were being realistic. You were protecting the story you'd built, I said. The one where you were the successful one and I was still finding my way. Because if I succeeded, if I actually built something, it complicated that story. That's not fair. Wei, how many times in 6 years have you asked me about my work? Actually asked, with genuine interest, not to make a point. He opened his mouth, closed it again. 0, I said. Every family dinner is a showcase for your achievements. Every single one comes with a comment about where I am by comparison, not from cruelty. I don't think you're a cruel person, but there's a habit in this family of deciding what people are. And once that decision is made, everything gets filtered through it. He rubbed his face with both hands. The things Vivian said at dinner were honest reflections of what you both think of me. I'm glad I know. I've actually been glad to know it for years. It told me a lot about who I needed to build my life around and who I didn't. He was quiet for a moment that stretched long enough to become something real. You're right, he said finally. He said it slowly, like each word cost something. You're completely right, and I have been a terrible brother. Yes? Is there anything I can do? I studied him across the table. This man who taught me to ride a bike on a Sunday morning when I was 7, who called me from his first week of university, homesick and pretending not to be, and talked for 2 hours about nothing. He was still in there somewhere beneath all of the performance and the competition and the years of accumulated assumption. You can start treating people with respect that isn't conditional, I said. Not based on their salary or their job title or whether they're succeeding in the way you recognize. I'm your sister regardless of whether I'm the COO of a $195 million company or still doing what you thought I was doing. He nodded. And you can understand that my relationship with our parents is mine to manage. I'm not ready to tell them about Nexagen. I'm still deciding if I ever will. He looked up sharply. You're not going to tell them. Why should I? So they can be proud now? So they can brag to their friends about their daughter, the COO? They don't get to have pride in something they spent 6 years dismissing. That's not how it works. I paused. If you want to repair this, respect that choice. That's where it starts. He sat back, thought about it for a real moment. Okay, he said. We sat in the silence that followed, and for the first time in a long time, it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was the kind that happens between 2 people recalibrating where they stand. Your company, Wei said eventually. The work you're doing in healthcare infrastructure, I researched it for the pitch and it's genuinely impressive. I just didn't know I was researching my sister. Thank you. Your evaluation was fair. I know we're probably not the right firm for the job. You're not, but you're in the top 3. Your compliance section was strong. You did good work. Something in his face shifted at that. Something that had been tight for hours let go. From you, he said. That actually means something. I stood when my phone buzzed with the reminder about my Singapore call. We can do this again, he said quickly. Dinner, just us. I want to get to know you. The actual you, not the version I invented. I looked at him. He looked sincere in the way people look when something has genuinely shaken them loose from who they thought they were. Text me next week, I said. I turned to leave. Wait. I stopped at the door without turning around. If you tell our parents about Nex again before I'm ready, our network is extensive. Every tech firm in 3 sectors comes through us. Don't. A pause. Understood, he said. I walked home through the city. 2 weeks later, I sent Meridian Advisory Group our decision. We were moving forward with a different firm for the primary integration contract. But Way's compliance proposal had been strong enough to warrant a pilot project focused on regulatory training protocols. Real work, fairly evaluated, with room to grow. He called 30 minutes after the email landed. You didn't have to do this. We didn't do it for you. We did it because your compliance work had genuine merit. Don't waste it. I won't. May, thank you. Make it worth our time. 3 months later, his team was delivering quality work on schedule. We were already discussing an expansion. He started texting me occasionally, not about contracts, just things. Funny observations, a photo of something that reminded him of when we were kids. The way siblings communicate when they actually mean it. But I had stopped attending family dinners where the only role available to me was disappointment. I had a life. I had built it piece by piece in the hours my family had spent not asking questions. I had dinner with Suyan once a week, a table at a quiet restaurant where we talked about growth and problems and whatever was happening in the city. I had friends who had been there from the beginning, who had watched me work 3 jobs with a clarity of purpose none of them fully understood at the time. 6 months after the pitch meeting, Forbes published their profile. The quiet powerhouse. Meet Mei Chen, the COO who built an $195 million company, while the world looked in a different direction. There was a photo of Suyan and me in the office, the city behind us through the glass. Wei texted me when it ran. I framed it. It's on my desk at work. I'm sorry I didn't see you clearly until now. I replied. You see me now. That's what matters. My mother called 3 minutes after the article went live online. I watched her name on the screen. I thought about the lamb stew, the birthday dinner I missed, the way her voice sounds when she talks about Wei at family gatherings. I let it ring. Then I set the phone face down, poured a glass of wine, and stood at my window. The city was laid out below me, the same view Wei had talked about at dinner like it was a destination. Tomorrow, Suyan and I had a meeting with a hospital network in Boston. $31 million on the table, the largest deal we'd ever pursued. But tonight I just stood there, in my home, in my life. No one's version of success, no one's source of pride or disappointment, just mine. I smiled. Here is what this story is actually about. It isn't about revenge. It isn't about the moment a brother walks into a conference room and realizes he had the wrong picture the whole time. Those moments feel satisfying from the outside, but they're not the point. The point is quieter than that. There are people in your life who have already decided who you are. They decided early. They decided without much information. And every time you walk into a room, they are comparing what they see against that original decision. Most of the time, they're not even aware they're doing it. It's just the channel they tuned to years ago, and they never changed it. You cannot control that. What you can control is whether you need them to change it. May didn't reveal herself to prove something to her family. She revealed herself to no one. The Forbes article did that, and by the time it ran, she had already spent 6 years building a life that didn't require their acknowledgement to be real. That's the actual move, not the dramatic reveal, not the silence that falls in the boardroom. The real move is building something so entirely yours that its value to you has nothing to do with whether anyone who doubted you ever finds out about it. Build quietly, build honestly. Let the work be the answer, even if the question is never asked out loud.